Does God want you to be rich? Or is money the root of all evil? Or is Pepper preaching prosperity promises or poverty piety? And what does any of this have to do with trading? Well, thank you for being here. I am Pepper. This is the Galilee Trade Podcast. And tonight we're going to be having a conversation about what the Bible actually says on the topic of money and wealth, and whether it's okay to want to make more money, to want to be wealthy. So buckle up. But first, as people are filtering in, please just let me know in the chat where you're watching us from. And if you don't mind adding a YT or an FB or an IG to your location, since we're broadcasting across Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube simultaneously. So just drop in like Louisiana YT or New Orleans IG in the chat if you'd like to let us know where you're watching from. And if you'd like to throw in a little who dat today, because yes, absolutely, the Saints won their second game of the season, and we're going to the Super Bowl. We're going to the Super Bowl. Also, as we are, as people are filtering in, Paulie is from Indiana watching on YouTube. Fantastic. Ryan's from Omaha watching on YouTube, and Jeremy is from Miami watching. So lots and lots of YouTube. Maybe we should jump Facebook and Instagram. Speaking of getting started here, before we get going, I wanted to point out the sponsor for tonight, which is our Godly Trading. This is our challenge. This is coming, our very first challenge we're doing. This is our Trading for Family Freedom. Mr. Producer, you don't mind throwing up the splash screen there. We have a 4-day challenge coming up starting the first day of December. So this is going to be every evening for 4 days, and we're going to be tackling the issues that holding us back. We're going to be tackling the issues of how to get started in trading, whether we should be trading in the first place, how to use trading to set your family free. So just go to godlytrading.com/challenge, and you can find more information about that. All right, back to what we were doing. This issue here, to be honest, is one I've been talking about for a lot lately, and you keep popping those up as people are dropping in. Of wealth, money, Christianity, the Bible. What does God say about all these? And no one wants to talk about this. But the good news is we don't have to be afraid of this topic. The Bible talks about money, or so it said. The Bible talks about money more than it talks about anything else. There's so many conflicting ideas about what the Bible actually says. That's why I thought we should talk about this time. By the way, if something goes wrong and YouTube suddenly pulls the plug on me, which they did 2 weeks ago, middle of the night, we'll have this all over on godlytrading.com. So the first thing we have to know about what the Bible says about money is, first and foremost, okay, what does it actually say? It starts with reading what's in there in its entirety. Case in point, audience interaction for here. By the way, I see Julie is from Canada, Nova Scotia, even. How many of you, and I'm going to ask this question, and some of you are going to be tempted to correct me. We'll get there. Absolutely correct me, ask any questions, point out where I've been wrong. But there's a point I'm trying to get to here. So just put me in the chat if you've ever heard this expression attributed to the Bible, all right? Not that if you believe it or you think it's correct, if you've heard it. How many of you have heard that money is the root of all evil? Just put me in the chat. If you have heard, there's a Bible verse that says money is the root of all evil. You don't need to correct it. You don't need to just put me in the chat if you've heard that. Specifically, money is the root of all evil. Drop me in the chat if you have heard that. And there's a reason that I'm going here to start with. Shanna says me, half of it at least. So yes, well, okay. If you've never heard that, drop not me. You know, if you've never actually heard money is the root of all evil, you can say not me. But if you've never heard that, right? Yes, me. Okay. Here's the thing. And this proves the point that we have to know what the words say before we can know what the word, capital W, says. We think we know what the Bible says here, and we've developed some fairly serious ideas about this. But before we can know what it's saying, we have to know what it says. Okay, so again, money is the root of all evil. That comes from a particular verse, but it's not exactly right. And this is where discernment, and we've been talking a lot about discernment this past week in our shorts. Discernment is a big topic in the challenge coming up. Charles Spurgeon, the 18th, 19th century, if you're in the 1800s or in the 19th century, is that how that works? Yes. Okay. So the 19th century preacher, Charles Spurgeon, defines discernment as this: it is not knowing the difference between right and wrong, knowing the difference between right and almost right. And money is the root of all evil is almost right. And it's close to what the verse actually says. Let's read the actual verse. If I can find my glasses, here we go. All right. 1 Timothy 6:10 says this: for the love of money is the root of evil. No, actually, it doesn't say that. Some people have heard that. The love of money is the root of all evil. That's also almost right. It's almost right? It's closer to being right, but it's not actually right. And this was one that, I thought that's what it was, right? Oh, of course, money is not the root of all evil. The love of money is the root of all evil. But even I was wrong about that. I say even I, as if I can't be wrong. Up until last year, someone pointed this out. Here's what 1 Timothy 6:10. Paul, writing to his minion, Timothy. No, he's not a minion. He's a disciple. Sorry about that. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil, from which some have strayed from the faith in their greediness and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. Not that money is the cause of every kind of evil, but it can be the root of all kinds of evil. In other words, lots of evil can be done because of money. That's absolutely true. I would imagine that almost any evil you can imagine has probably been done before in the name of money. But it's not true. It can't be true that the love of money is the root of every single kind of it, all evil, right? All kinds and all are very different. The love of money is the root of all evil. That can't be true. Have you ever committed a sin that had nothing to do with money? Oversleeping, overeating, whatever it is. Why are you looking at Mr. Producers over here? I'm not calling you out, calling me out. Okay, if the love of money was the root of all evil, that means that Satan paid Eve to eat the apple. All right, that's what that means. So here's a prime example of somehow or another, we in the world, in Christendom, lo, these last 500 years, have led to believe certain things about money, and as a result, we don't even want to talk about it. Let me just ask all of you out there who are watching right now. I'm assuming that at least some of you are a member of a church somewhere. Imagine for a moment that you got up on stage. Assuming you have a stage. I got to stop doing that. My camera refocuses every time I reach forward. What's that guy's name? Back then, Kenneth something. You had to put your hand on the screen, and I'll speak in tongues, and I don't remember. That was before my time, which Mr. Producer looking at me like I was tapping out in Morse code. I have no idea where I was going with that. I just can thank you, Mr. Producer, for derailing my thought. Just with Johnny's job. We have been led to believe certain things that just aren't true. Imagine if you stood up in front of your congregation and you said, "I want to be rich." How long before they threw you out of the church? Right? I mean, can you imagine just saying those words out loud? I want to be rich. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. We all sort of, I can't even imagine, even right now, me saying those words out loud. 90% of me, 12% of me, whatever, is recoiling at the very thought of that. So let's go with what the Bible says about these things. We have emotions that are built in. For this reason, I'm going to chase a rabbit for just 45 seconds. He's 24, so we started homeschooling when he was around 6, so that's 18 years ago. So 18 years ago, My wife and I went to a homeschool convention. A fellow stood up. His name is Vodi Bakum. He went to be with the Lord about 3 months ago, I think. Sort of a giant in the homeschool movement. Anyway, long story short, he's talking about how the benefits of homeschooling. Lady comes up to him afterwards. She says, "Mr. Bakum, you talk about how great homeschooling was, but you went to public school and you're okay." And he's like, "Ma'am," this has nothing to do with public school, by the way. This has to do with what I'm about to share with you. I said, "Ma'am, two things. Number one, I went to public school 30 years ago. All right, that's different. But number two, I'm not okay. And the fact that you think I'm okay means you're not okay." So when it comes to this idea of Christianity and the Bible and wealth, I think the best way to describe it is very few of us are okay. Most of us have been led to believe things that aren't necessarily biblical. Speaking of biblical, let's dive into to some scripture. I'm going to go over the top 3 verses that I hear the most often when people say you shouldn't try to earn more money. By the way, if anyone ever tells you that you shouldn't be trying to, for example, trading to earn more money, you're just greedy, right? You're just trading is being used to generate wealth for your family. You're wrong if you want to generate wealth. A real quick answer to that criticism is, okay, so what you're saying is you have never asked for a raise in your entire life. That's what you're saying. You should want more money. Anyway, so there's 3 primary verses that I hear the most often quoted, misquoted. We just went through this, so often misquoted. This one from Matthew 6:19. My glasses are in my hand. My glasses are in my hand. Don't look at me like that. Children are a blessing, or so I'm told. Matthew 6:19 says, "Do not lay up," by the way, this is the New King James. "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up treasures in heaven." Yada, yada, yada. It's okay. That means you should not be trying to generate wealth here on earth. You shouldn't be laying up treasures here on earth. So you should not try to create wealth through trading or investing, or whatever it is. Just be happy with where you are in life. God will provide. God will provide, absolutely. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. One of my favorite verses, 1 Samuel 7:12, and he raises up this stone and calls it Ebenezer and says, "Thus far, the Lord has provided." Ebenezer, 2 words meaning 1 word, stone of help. God will absolutely provide. However, this verse doesn't quite mean what you think it means if you look at it. Number 1, what's the most important verse? Somebody, as I'm about to dive into the Greek, Greek, not Hebrew, what's the 1 word you think in this verse is most important? I'm not even going to read the whole verse. "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth." Blah, 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 blah. All right. Of that phrase, what's the most important word in that phrase? Somebody just drop in the chat. "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth." 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You got a 1 out of 9 chance of being right, or I could be wrong about this. "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth." Which is the most important word in that verse, do you think? Drop it in the chat. So, obviously, we don't want to truncate any verses. So I will read, as you're typing, I will read the rest of it. "Where moth and rust destroy." Wonder what kind of treasure there is that gets destroyed by both moths. I guess a moth would destroy fabric and rust would destroy iron. Neither one of them is touching gold, but we'll get there. We got any lay? Okay, that's a very good one. Here's my opinion. Yourselves. That's what I think. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures here on earth. One of the 2 foundational verses for godly trading as a company is Proverbs 13:22. It says, "A good man or woman," not going to dive into the Hebrew there. It's just 1 word. It says tov. It's good. Apparently, I'm going to dive into the Hebrew. The word tov is neither masculine nor feminine. A good person leaves an inheritance to her children's children. You're laying up treasures on earth for someone other than yourself. But this open my eyes. Always dive into, if you get hung up, or if you're laying a foundation of a verse and you don't fully understand it, go look at the what these words mean. There's a fantastic website. I've got it pulled up on my laptop right now, blueletterbible.org. I donate 20 bucks a month to them. They could use your help as well. They just have a website where you can go and you can search the words. So this word treasure, which is what was so fascinating to me, this word treasure, do not lay up for yourself. I got to stop pointing at the camera because it's freaking out. Do not lay up for yourselves treasure on earth. This word treasure is the word thesaurus. Okay, it doesn't mean what you think it means. It means a place where goods or precious things are stored. In other words, a treasury, things stored in a treasury. Think Scrooge McDuck swimming through his giant vault of gold coins. That's what it's talking about. Do not, Scrooge McDuck, do not fill a storehouse with things. When it says lay up treasures on earth, that's what it is saying. Do not fill up your treasury with treasurables. Do that in heaven. You've got a treasury in heaven, a giant storage building that's got things that you're laying up for. Anyway, that opened my eyes. I'm like, because you think about that very idea of I've got this giant vault full of gold coins and it's mine, my precious, like Gollum, and I'm not going to do the voice. Right? That comes, even that word picture comes with an attitude that we all would love to avoid. As well as understanding what the words say specifically. All right, so treasure doesn't mean what I think it doesn't mean money. It doesn't mean little pieces of paper or gold coins. It means these things that I'm hanging on to and I'm depending my life on. I didn't say that right. That I'm counting on for me. That's where my faith. That's what I'm using to make it through life. That's where my provision comes from. My giant vault full of gold coins. Another principle, as well as looking at the words, apply the biblical principle of non-contradiction to these verses. Right? What do you mean? Right, it says, rich man and Lazarus, yourself is a key word, heart motivation. By the way, spoiler alert, we're getting to the rich man and Lazarus. Poor rich man, right? He has to spend eternity in hell. He doesn't even have a name. Lazarus does. Well, anyway, we're going to get there in just a minute, by the way. Good reference. Matthew 19:24. Actually, you know what? I think we're getting there right now. No, here we go. This is another verse that a lot of people use to say you should not try to be rich. By the way, rich is a relative term. Wealth has substance to it. Wealth means I am generating value to the world. Rich just means I've got a couple of more of these in my pocket than your average person or than the person next to me. However much money you make, to somebody in the world, you are rich. So rich is a relative term. But anyway, Matthew 19:24. Jesus is telling the story of a parable to his apostles, his disciples. He said, let's back up to 23. He says, then Jesus said to his disciples, assuredly, I say to you that it is hard for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. And again, I say to you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God. And by the way, this is for all of the forced interpretation of, okay, the eye of a needle is really a gate where the camel has to get on its hands and knees, not hands and knees, but its knees and all this. I think Jesus is talking about a real camel and a real needle, right? It's impossible. So, okay, so, and the disciples, verse 25. When his disciples heard it, they were greatly astonished, saying, who then can be saved? Jesus says, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle. Now, can a camel go through the eye of a needle? No. So that's impossible. And it's easier for that to happen than a rich man. So the implication is a rich man's impossible to go to heaven. As Ryan just pointed out, if you look through the scripture and you find biblical references to people being in heaven. I found 3. There's only 3 people that I can find a Bible verse that says they reside in heaven. Do we know who those 3 people are? One of them is a gimme. Now, you think, okay, what about Enoch, right? Genesis says Enoch walked with God and was no more because God took him. Well, it doesn't say where God took him. I'm being very pedantic here, yes. Moses and Elijah came down on the Mount of Transfiguration. Where were they beforehand? We don't know. I'm being so very specific. There's only 3 people that an actual Bible verse says are in heaven. Number 1, Jesus. Okay, that was a gimme. However, when he got stoned to death, they laid his clothes at Paul's feet. Stephen, reasonably sure it's Stephen. When Stephen is dying, he looks up and says, I see the heavens parted, and there's Jesus standing at the right hand of God. So there's evidence that Jesus is in heaven. That one was easy. There's 2 more. The only other 2 people that we have biblical evidence are actually in heaven. Ryan mentioned just a minute ago. The story of the rich man and Lazarus. So in that story, there's 2 people. Lazarus, who's poor, and some dude who's got money. Both die. Scrooge McDuck. They both die, and they both go to their respective places. I'm going to be pedantic once more. They were not in heaven or hell. They were in heaven and hell's waiting rooms, right? So because they were, separated by a gulf, and they could talk to one another, they could see one another. So rich man looks to Father Abraham, and Lazarus is resting on Abraham's bosom. And they have a conversation, and Abraham says, sorry, can't help you. Anyway, that technically wasn't heaven. That was heaven's waiting room. Heaven now, it's empty, all that. So we only had those 2 people. Those are the only 2 people we have, other than Jesus, that we know for a fact are in heaven. Jesus just got through saying it's impossible for a rich man to get into heaven. What does the Bible tell us about Abraham? Genesis 13:2 says, Abraham was rich in livestock and silver and gold. Is that what it says? No. Man on the cross next to Jesus, yes, Jesus did say, today you'll be with me in paradise. He did say that. By the criteria that I have laid down, Jesus didn't later on come back and say, by the way, that dude's in paradise. I'm being very, very, very specific. But you're right. Okay. Well, the point is that of the people, let's include him, of the people that we know of that are in heaven, Abraham is one of the few that we know of is in heaven. Matter of fact, that section of heaven was named after him. And Abraham wasn't just rich. The verse doesn't say Abraham was rich. The verse says Abraham was very rich in livestock, in silver, and in gold. And the word that it uses for rich means burdened heavily. It's like Abraham was overwhelmed with livestock, silver, and gold. So the biblical principle of non-contradiction. Whatever. It's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter heaven. Whatever that means. And that's a whole conversation we're not going to have because we're going to touch on it, but we're not going to go there. Whatever that means, it cannot mean it's impossible for a rich man to go to heaven because Abraham's in heaven. We know that for a fact. And Abraham was incredibly rich. So Bible doesn't contradict itself. So we know for a fact that there's nothing inherently wrong with being rich. Abraham was one of the wealthiest people at the time. In this particular case, Jesus probably wasn't talking about rich in monetary, rich in these things, right? Pieces of paper. For the very reason that as soon as he was read all of chapter 19 of Matthew in context. And you'll see that there was a conversation just prior to that about the fellow who was trying to justify his own actions, and he had lots of money. That was a specific situation. But as soon as Jesus says a rich man can't get into heaven, the disciples are like, it says they were greatly astonished, saying, well, then who can get into heaven? Now, if I were to tell you that rich people can't get into heaven, and then ask you the question, so who can get into heaven? What would your answer be? The poor, right? But they didn't make that leap. Oh, I said, okay, well, Jesus just said rich people can't get there. So who can get there? I guess the poor can get there. No, they didn't get there. So all of that to say this, that verse that we hear so often, oh, it's easier for, it's hard for rich men to enter the kingdom of heaven. Maybe what Jesus is talking about there is not rich, like Abraham being very rich with gold, silver, and camels, cattle. Could have been camels. These are the main three verses that have been used to condition us that seeking to obtain wealth is evil. Now, sure, for ourselves, maybe the intent of everyone's heart is their own. I'm not going to generalize any of that. But wealth is just a tool. And it's one that God put here for a reason. In the book of Genesis, in the first couple of chapters of Genesis, God uses good 8 times. All right. First 7 times, God made light, made the world, separated it, saw it was good. God made the animals, saw it was good. God made this and that, saw it was good. He made it, saw it was good. He made it, saw it was good. He made it 7 times. 7 is the number of completion. The very next time God references something as being good was gold. There's gold in the land of Ophir, and the gold there is good. God called it good. Gold is like the historical personification of wealth, of money, because it doesn't corrupt. It doesn't tarnish, that kind of a thing. Silver does, but you have to have silver polish. There's no such thing as gold polish. So I'm going to throw some verses out at you to look at yourself. Consider yourself. We've mentioned it before. Proverbs 13:22. Let me read the whole thing. When I read this verse out, say, hey, we here about Godly Trading believe that a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, and trading is the best way to start that. I leave off the second half of that verse because when I'm talking to either non-believers or people who aren't that strong in their faith, the second half of the verse could kind of throw them. Let me read the whole verse. I shouldn't do that. You shouldn't add to or subtract from the scripture. A good man, this is Proverbs 13:22. A good man or woman leaves an inheritance to his children's children, but the wealth of the sinner is stored up for the righteous. Does that mean that when George Soros dies, we're all getting his money? Man, I'm going to get banned from YouTube. Again, I know I did not mean any of that. That was a joke. That was a joke. That's what it says. Deuteronomy 8:18. And you shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you the power to get wealth, that he may establish his covenant which he swore to your fathers as it is to this day. God is the one that gives us the power to get wealth. Sorry, I'm laughing because as soon as I said that, the number of people watching just like got cut in half. I'm going to irritate so many people. And how is it that God gives us the power to create wealth, to get wealth? I think it's through our creative ability. And you might be surprised to hear this. I think that trading is such a creative outlet. My mom was an artist. Do not have any of her art here in the room, I don't believe. Got art all over this house that of hers, right? She loved creating. I love to write or a book. Those are some natural creative outlets. I think that absolutely creating a trade plan that has a moving average, and you get in here and you get out there and you got a rule, that is all using your creativity. Remember, when God told us about himself in Genesis 1, as a matter of fact, in Genesis 1:1, he could have chosen anything as the first characteristic of himself that he revealed to mankind. God is, I've heard something, God is love. God is faithful. God is holy. God is pure. God is strong. God is eternal. God is omniscient. All of these God is, and they're all absolutely correct. None of those are the first thing that God told us about himself. What is the first thing God told us about himself? Somebody drop in the chat. The first attribute of God that we know in Genesis 1:1. Just drop that in there. Absolutely. What? God created. And we know that we are made in the image of God. God created, which therefore means God is creative. He's our creator. We are his creations. And I think that's what this verse in Deuteronomy is talking about. And you shall remember that the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you the power to get wealth. What is that power? It is his innate creativity that he puts within all of us. And there are few things more creative than trading. Don't believe me? Go out on YouTube and watch people who are live trading. I literally have seen people take the opposite direction on the same trade and both end up making money. Doesn't make any sense, but yet they both found creative ways to do what they're doing. Joshua 1:8. I love this one. Oh, I love them all. Okay. Oh, this particularly. This Joshua 1 is God's commissioning of Joshua, and the whole chapter is full of don't worry, I'll be with you. Don't worry, I'll be with you. Don't worry, I'll be with you. He says it over and over and over again. I will never leave you or forsake you. That phrase is scattered through the whole. But anyway, 1:8. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate in it day and night. I think I did a video on this. You shall meditate in it day and night, that you may observe to do according to all that is written in it. Why? Or then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success. Is God telling Joshua that if you study and meditate on his word day and night, you will be prosperous and have success? Is God saying, hey, you're going to be rich if you read the Bible? What God tells Joshua is, you shall meditate on this book of the law day and night, and then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success. I'm not going to say anything more than that. That's what it says. And I know you think, okay, prosperity gospel alert. Prosperity is a fantastic word. I don't actually know what prosperity gospel is, to be honest. I've heard people speak about it in a negative way, so I can only assume there's something negative attached to it. But I didn't like this. This was in my Bible when I woke up this morning. I love that phrase. That's a Myron Goldenism. God says, you shall meditate on this book of the law day and night, and then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success. By the way, if you meditate on this day and night, you will absolutely be a better trader. We have so many podcasts and videos on, can the Bible make you a better trader? And the answer is yes, absolutely. It's a bit of a throw. No, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a bit of an easy trick question, right? It's a trick question. Because if you ask the question to somebody, hey, can the Bible make you a better? However you finish that sentence, the answer is yes. Maybe the sinner would not be would be the only one that you couldn't do. Okay, fine. I found one. Can the Bible make you a better sinner? No. People who tried to use the Bible for nefarious purposes have. Anybody know C.S. Lewis? I know Johnny's not here to distract me. I'm gonna have to distract myself. Are you aware that C.S. Lewis was an atheist who sat down to disprove the Bible, got saved, and wrote Chronicles of Narnia? I didn't either until I heard that. It's true. So Joshua 1:8. Yeah, this book of the law, meditate, prosperity. I can't help that it's written in there. And then Proverbs. Oh my goodness! All right, I'm just going to read these off to you, and you can write these down. Proverbs 10:22, 13:11, 14:23, 15:6, 21:5, 28:20. Let me go back through and read a couple of those. 10:22 says, "The blessing of the Lord makes one rich, and he adds no sorrow with it. I don't know how you get around that. 13:11. Go to Proverbs 13:11 says, wealth gained by dishonesty will be diminished. Okay, that sounds great. But he who gathers by labor will increase. Okay. On and on and on. There are so many verses that point to the fact that God created us to use our creativity to generate wealth. Think about it from the perspective of a Klingon who shows up on Earth, and he's looking at all the different religions, and he looks down and says, okay, which one do I want to join? Well, the Christians are always broke, and they're really proud of being broke. I don't think I want to be them. There is no biblical foundation that I have found. Someone please correct me if I'm wrong. There's no biblical foundation that I have found that poverty and piety are in any way connected. That the closer you are closer to God, the poorer you are. Now, individually, sure, you pray hard when you're out of work. I was out of work for 6 months back in 2017/18, one of those 2 years. Prayed hard. Never, so what? 17. Never felt closer to God than when I was dead broke. And this one over here, breaking all manner of child labor laws, working 80 hours a week. Well, technically, he wasn't breaking child labor laws. His employer was breaking child labor laws. But there's no connection between being poor and close to God. And even, I'm not going to explain this, and I'm not going down this rabbit hole. But even the very idea of Jesus being a poor carpenter is not backed up by Scripture. That's a whole video that I am not doing. But everything that I have looked at says Jesus had lots of money. Jesus was wealthy. Yeah. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, fantastic movie. Oh my goodness, there's a scene in there where Indy's trying to go get the thing for his dad because his dad's been gut shot by a Nazi. I said Nazi on YouTube, dadgummit. That's it for us. And he's got this. There's a scene where he's having to jump across this chasm, and he's like, "Oh, it's a leap of faith." Oh my goodness, I hate that. Anyway, he finally has to go pick one of the chalices to drink out of. And he goes, "Oh, look, there's the cup of a poor carpenter." Well, again, we think that because Jesus was poor, that means that we must be poor to be close to Jesus. Well, the very idea that Jesus was poor is also not biblical. Treasurer, I picked poorly. What was it? At the end of that movie, dude drinks out of the chalice, and he his face melts off. It dissolves, and the guy that's been there for 500 years with what's the word I'm looking for? The English people with the cross on their halberd that went down. The Crusader. The Crusader's like, he chose poorly. So yeah, maybe they chose their treasurer, Judas, poorly, but they had a treasurer. They had a treasure box. Anyway, not going to go down that route. It's fascinating. It's incredibly fascinating when you put the pieces together and think, hang on, maybe this entire idea of Jesus being poor is wrong. But for most of us, myself included, up until last year, around April, I started binge watching and learning. Most of us would have said, I could not fathom standing up in front of a church saying I want to be rich. Most of us would have said, and me, I would have said, I don't want to be rich. Matter of fact, I remember these words coming out of my mouth last February. I don't want to be rich. I just want to be comfortable. I just want enough money to pay my bills. I just want to be comfortable. Why? Why in this one area of money do we set some sort of ceiling? By the way, isn't that kind of selfish? I want to be comfortable for me. But why stop in this one area? Let me ask you this question. How healthy does God want you to be? As healthy as you can be, or just healthy enough to be comfortable, right? Okay, well, I may be 400 pounds, but at least I'm not 500 pounds, right? I'm comfortable at 400 pounds. I may drink 50 Cokes a day, but at least it's not 100 Cokes a day. I'm not calling out the producer for any particular reason. Monsters a day, yes. How hard does he call you to work? Oh, not too hard. All right, I don't want to work too hard, but just enough to be comfortable. Let me ask you this question: how long do you want to live? Do you want to live just long enough to be comfortable, or do you want to live as long as you can? Here's one that might hit home. How smart do you want your kids to be? As smart as possible, or just smart enough to get by? Okay. How successful do you want your grandkids to be? Oh, I don't want them to be that successful. Just why? Why in this one area of generating wealth do we put a cap out of fear that God is going to judge us? God knows our hearts. And honestly, the heart issue that holds yourself back can be just as damaging as the heart issue that wants more. I've also heard it said that money can't buy happiness. Well, okay. I've seen, if you've never been to LSU, you've seen posters when crawfish season rolls around that says money can't buy happiness, but money can buy crawfish, and it's the same thing. Ryan says, Proverbs 38, honestly working through this personally, trusting God will provide the discernment, run my own business, and still kind of cap myself. Prime example. Yes?
I have something I want to say that involves that.
Involves that? Okay. Say something that involves that. This is the producer speaking.
Hello, I'm producer. In my own opinion, there's nothing wrong with wanting to make more money as long as the reason you want to make more money is to help others, help your family, and it's not to just have money just to have money and hold on to it, which is basically what you've been saying. But it's as long as you use that money for something, help the church out, help your neighbor out when they're in trouble. Like, as long as you use it for actual good deeds and good things, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to just have money, make more money just to have the money, hold on to it, Scrooge McDuck Gollum style, then that's when the whole root of all idea comes in.
I just had a Scrooge McDuck Gollum mashup image in my head.
That's bad. Thank you, Ryan.
By the way, Ryan, I'm gonna assume that the producer knows what you mean when you said cap.
As in, like, he, not cap as in like cap as in like he puts a.
Oh, I got cap. Gotcha. Money can't buy happiness. Money can't buy any emotion. Money can't buy
Gumbo.
Money can't buy a restful night. Money can't buy any emotion. But so why money and happiness? However, I've heard this kid from a CPA. He was interviewing a preacher. He said, "Hey, if you think money can't buy happiness, you haven't given away enough of it yet. Watch the happiness on someone else's face when you give them money." But even that, I think, is twisted. Ephesians 5:16, and we're going to have to bring this in for a landing. Limiting beliefs. Absolutely. The first night of the challenge is all about overcoming limiting beliefs. There are so many of them. But there are three main limiting beliefs when it comes to trading in particular. That night's entitled "The Three Lies Holding You Back from Setting Your Family Free." I need to work on the title. It doesn't really roll off the tongue. But anyway, even this, money can't buy happiness. Discernment would say, yeah, maybe almost right, but what does the Bible say? Ephesians 5:16, and then we'll bring it in for a landing over here. 5:15, let's start there. See then that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise. All right, no problem there. Don't walk foolish, walk wise. Redeeming the time because the days are evil. Redeeming, that word redeeming there in the Greek means to buy back. And this word evil doesn't necessarily mean evil like Sauron or Dylan Falcons. It means, sorry.
No, we don't apologize for that.
We don't apologize for that. It means difficult. Buy back your time because the days are difficult. If you had the means to pay somebody to do the task that you hate, would that make you happier? If I could pay somebody to go grocery shopping for me on the weekends, I would be happier and they would have money. It would be blessing them. In that instance, can money buy happiness? I'm going to say yes. I take my money, I give it to Bob to go buy my groceries, and I can spend the day doing something else. I'm happy. Bob's happy. Oh, look, money has bought happiness. I'm not trying to. You get what I'm trying to say here. We have limiting beliefs. Ryan is right. We have limiting beliefs that have been baked into Christianity for no reason that I can think of. In the words of, what do you call it when someone has died? Not former. In the words of Vodi Bakum, the late great. Thank you. In the words of the late great Vodi Bakum, we're not okay. Somehow, Satan has managed to pull the wool over the eyes of Christianity for the last 500 years. Can you imagine if everyone in your church, just picture in your mind your church on a Sunday morning, however many people are in the pews or chairs or whatever. Can you imagine if every single one of them was a millionaire? What good for the community could your church accomplish if you weren't held back by money? We didn't even get to, which is one of my favorite ones. The first about mammon, right? You can't serve two masters. You can't serve God and mammon because you're going to hate one and cling to the other. Serving means being controlled by, right? We all think, well, I don't want to be controlled by this idea of too much money. I'm going to end on this one. Has anybody out there watching this ever had a situation in life where lack of money controlled you? I can't go do this thing. My wife and I, when we were in college and married and dead broke, one Friday night decided we're going to go out to eat. We're going to splurge and go to Wendy's. And she's balancing the checkbook as I'm backing out and making my way through the parking lot of the apartment complex. We got out to the main road. I said, "What's the verdict?" She said, "Minus $2.14. 13. It was minus $2 and something. Do you think that money was controlling our lives? Absolutely. The lack of it was controlling our lives. We found enough money to go buy a loaf of bread, and she went to her office and found jelly packets. Anyway, but we are so afraid that if we earn $100,000 a year and earn one extra dollar, that we're going to turn into the combination of Scrooge McDuck and Ebenezer Scrooge. I was both saying Scrooge, aren't they? I never knew that before. We're going to turn evil. We're going to turn into Gollum. The minute we earn $1 more than God wants us to, we are destined for hell. When God himself, back in one of these verses, said, Deuteronomy 8:18, it is God who gives you the power to get wealth. Now, I happen to believe that this avenue of creativity is expressed fantastically, which is not a word, which is expressed best through trading, and that trading is the best first step, because all of the things that you learn and all the emotions that you wrestle with, and oh my goodness, do you wrestle with your emotions? All of that builds the muscle that you go out and use everywhere else in life. Trading is the best boot camp. Maybe I should be, instead of calling it a challenge, maybe I should call it a boot camp. Right now, trading is the best boot camp for building wealth long term. And yes, individually, God has a plan for each one of us that includes this or that, and we don't know. What the best, and I said I was bringing in for landing, and I lied. All right, I'm not going to go an hour. The best theological statement I've ever seen out there in pop culture was from the movie Rudy. Rudy goes to his priest, and his priest says, "Rudy, I've been a priest for 50 years. I have learned two things. There is a God, and I am not him. Does God want you to be rich? I have no idea. Does God want all of us to be rich? I have no idea. Does God want us to be blind? No. And yet, Jesus said specifically, one dude was born blind so that Jesus could be glorified in healing him of his blindness. What I do know is that one day, a long time ago, God told Joshua, meditate on my word and you will be prosperous and have good success. And God also told Moses, that he is the one that gave him power to get wealth. I don't know how you can come to any other conclusion than, yes, people abuse God's gifts all the time. Doesn't mean the gifts are wrong. It means that we're the ones that are wrong. God wants you to be rich. Don't think he wants you to be poor. I think he wants you to be everything he created you to be. And to use, as we talk about in trading, use your talents and abilities to analyze the market, to set up your trade and trade it with discipline, and then let whatever happens happen. God is in charge of the rest of it. Use your talents and abilities to go out there in the marketplace and make as much money as you can, and let God take care of the actual amount. Once your heart is right, everything else will follow. So that was this topic. There was a lot more. Maybe 6 months from now, we'll circle back and hit the verses that I couldn't get to, assuming YouTube still has. I'm joking about it now, but we actually got taken off of the internet for about 15 minutes 3 weeks ago because YouTube did not like the fact that I'm mixing faith and finances. I may have mentioned the First Amendment on them, but anyway. Thank you guys for participating, Brian especially. Thank you guys for participating in this. Next week we'll be back with an interview. I've got a couple of them that I'm still trying to set up. I really thoroughly enjoy having conversations with fellow Christian traders and hearing their journeys. It's just fascinating to me how God. Talk about creativity. Everybody's different. Everybody's learning coming to the same point from a completely different origin. Bring it in for a landing, he says, and the producer's cutting me off. With that, guys, thank you for being here. I'll see y'all next time.